listening to the We Are West Ham podcast, and this is the Opposition View with me, Will Pugh, ahead of West Ham United versus Brighton and Hove Albion on Saturday. As most of you listening will know, this is a fixture that has, for the last decade or more, struck fear into the hearts of Hammers fans up and down the country. And quite frankly, although we've broken the curse by finally beating Brighton 3 games ago, that was, with 2 draws since. So considering our form against the Seagulls in recent years, since 2013, I think, an actual sort of quite a positive run of form. I'm joined by Brighton content creator Tom Phillips. So have a look ahead to that game on Saturday. Any West Ham fans listening, if you can strike up any sort of excitement at all for this game, fair play, you're a better man and perhaps fan than I am. But Tom is here to do the podcast service and to tell us what we can expect, given that we couldn't beat Southampton at home last time out, the worst team in modern Premier League history. I'm not holding out much hope for this weekend. Tom, it's great to have you with us, mate. Fortunately, as I said to you just before we come on, not quite across the whole season, but your recent form is quite minging, which sort of makes me fills me with a little bit of hope. But how's it going? How are you feeling about Brighton this season?
Hi there, Will. Thanks for having me. Well, it's safe to say this season has been a fair bit of a roller coaster ride for us, and I think that's probably the expectation we had under Hertzler. It was either going to be us in the European conversation or us in the relegation conversation. We just didn't know where we would be in any way, shape, or form. And either way, we were going to have some sort of excitement. And we've had that. And then we've had some really, really low points. And, you know, I think if anyone who has seen us play of late, it hasn't really reaped any rewards at the moment. It's very much a headache situation to be in. So I'm looking forward to this. It's not even an awkward off. It's like a mediocrity off this weekend, isn't it? So
I'd love to be good enough to be called mediocre, mate.
Take it. Got to take the little wins.
Exactly. Yeah. I tell you what, we've got a few things to cover because I do want to talk to you about Graham Potter. Obviously, that's kind of the most interesting thing I think I want to talk to you about, really, because the game itself for both clubs, I would say, just really, I don't think really matters, particularly for West Ham. Although I think it's this week. If we get a point, we're officially safe. So we're pretty much safe anyway. But there's that one small mercy to hold on to. Before we chat about Potter and Hertzler and all that, just it's no win in 6 for you guys. And you went out the FA Cup, of course, Nottingham Forest. That was on penalties, but you've lost your big derby away at Crystal Palace 2-1 in April. Couldn't beat Leicester at home. They're terrible. 2-2 with Leicester. Lost 4-2 at Brentford last time out. Lost a 3-0 home defeat to Villa and a 2-2 draw away at Manchester City. All the results you've had since that 2-1 victory at home to Fulham on the 8th of March was the last time you've won. So what's gone on recently, or is it easier to sort of talk about Hertzler and the season on the whole, to sort of, because I say you're still 10th in the league, which isn't terrible at all.
No, it's not terrible. It's just that when the good happen, they happen for a very long time. The bad times happen for a very long time. There's never been sort of like these up and down motions or anything like that at all. I think.
Why is that?
I mean, I could go for all the cliches. The injuries is a big factor. I think we have lost if you combine the amount of days our players have lost through injury, it is more than the other top 3 or 4 in the table. It was a stat that I read that was really bonkers, but we top the charts in terms of injuries at the moment. I think if you go all the way back to the start of the season, our recruitment was spot on, But then the injuries happened. I mean, we look at Matt O'Reilly, who came in full of promise from Celtic. Celtic fans were kind of like fast becoming having Brighton as a second team almost. And then I can only describe it as some would say, GBH in the first 4 minutes of his debut against Crawley Town in the League Cup, and that ruined it for him. We then struggled a lot in our midfield. Carlos Baliba has been carrying us. I think he's still a teenager at the moment, as well as Jack Hinchelwood as well. So we've got two very, very young central midfielders. Hertzler's style of play is centered around the middle of the park. Baliba's great at it. Hinchelwood has his moments, but they're young and they're naive. Classic. So that if we get overrun in there, we shoot ourselves in the foot big time. You know, you saw that in the Forest defeat. Well, I say Forest defeat, it's a pure and utter annihilation at City Grounds. I love Hertzler at times because he came in with pure vibes, thinking, yeah, we'll take on.
Just quickly, mate. Sorry, this is the 7-0 thrashing on the 1st of February you're talking about, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So Hinchelwood was the only
central
midfielder. Yeah, thank you. No, all right. I've got the therapist in an hour, so I'll
yeah. So sorry, you were just saying Hertzler was pure vibes when he came in, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, and he has moments where I think maybe it would have worked in the Bundesliga. Maybe it could have worked against another team, but against a Nottingham Forest side who were overrunning our midfield because we only had one, and that was Jack Hinchelwood. We got absolutely smashed to pieces. We had 5 forwards in that game, and it just didn't work out at all.
No.
But then we went on a really good run. Again, it's because we had a really sound midfield, and we haven't really had that solid replacement yet from McAllister and Caicedo from 2 seasons ago.
Right.
And that's something that De Zerbi didn't really enjoy them last season with, and that's we're trying to fix this season. Again,
isn't Baliba the Caicedo replacement, though, to be fair? I get what you're saying about McAllister. And again, they're impossible players to replace almost, aren't they? When you're selling them for 100 million for Caicedo, and what was McAllister, 60-ish or whatever?
Something like that. There was what was it was described? It wasn't a release clause. It was a release mechanism in the contract or something silly like that. But yeah, we're talking about.
But either way, those two players are top class talents, aren't they? And look, Brighton's recruitment's outstanding. You're one of the best run clubs in the country, certainly as far as outsiders are concerned. But you've replaced Caicedo. It's fair to say with Baliba, whether he's quite at the level or not, but he's another one who's on the conveyor belt almost, isn't he? And it's difficult to replace that sort of talent twice, isn't it? At the same time.
Yeah, it is. And you know, it's credit to Tony Bloom and whatever data voodoo he has in his back pocket that we can find these gems at the moment. So Baliba has been fantastic for us, and which is fantastic. But there just needs to be. It does time for them to gel. And again, he's young and we can't rely on him over 50 plus games. Otherwise we'll suffer with the main person in our spine with injuries.
Yeah.
That's just one factor. Then we look at the defense, and Lewis Dunk hasn't had the best season, which I hate to say. He's one of our own. We love him to pieces, and many Brighton fans will go to war with him. However, he still had a bit of a shocker. The best defender in our team
squad earlier this season.
Last season, I think it was. I think it was just
it not?
before
I thought he was in the English squad at the beginning of this year. But yeah, fair enough.
No, I can't remember if he was or not. But he just hasn't had the season to remember. Sadly, he has picked up injuries along the way. And then you've got Jan-Paul van Hecker, who has been fantastic for us. He has been a rock. Adam Webster, and I think I'll speak on behalf of every Brighton fan when I say this. If you talk to us at the start of the season, who wouldn't you be upset with to leave? It'll be Adam Webster. Again, someone who hasn't really been in the pecking order, and all of a sudden he's just shot right up when he's been called on. He's been superb for us. So all of a sudden he's flipped the script, which is fantastic because he's a local boy himself, despite the fact, he's been to Pompey and Bristol City. He is a Sussex lad, and again, sort of one of our own, but he's been able to brush off the picks this season. Again, he's had injuries as well. Tarek Lamptey injured, James Milner injured, Estupiñán's had frustrations. We had, the most signed football manager wonder kid in Valentin Barco. He's now had an unsuccessful loan spell at Sevilla, and now he's at Strasbourg with no real indication he's got a future at the Albion. So while we can talk about us having fantastic recruitment, at the same time, sometimes it just doesn't work, and that's just the nature of the game. So I hate saying it, but we are in a transition season. I'll take how we're doing it, but
it's brilliant. Yeah,
knowing the potential and knowing what we could have achieved, it does leave a sour taste in our mouths for sure. That's kind of like where we're at the moment. It's kind of like, it's one of those where you take a draw and then you come out of it after dropping 2 points.
Yeah. With the injuries though, mate, is it because a lot of the time in this day and age, right, you hear about injuries, and then whereas in days gone by, if teams had a lot of injuries, you go, oh, they've been unlucky, and that was it, and everyone would just crack on. But now there's a bit more focus creeping in about, well, particularly at Tottenham, and how lots of their defenders tend to get injuries, and there's some theories suggesting that that's because of the extremely high line that Ange is playing, the number of sprints that they're having to do back to track back compared to some of their Premier League counterparts is like exponentially higher, and therefore it sort of makes sense. Is there anything in the style of play at all, do you think, that hurts the style of play, that maybe leads to that, or do you just think you have been unlucky?
It's a mixture of being unlucky. Again, Matt O'Reilly's injury wasn't down to phase of play. Again, that was just down to just, as some put it,
an awful challenge.
It's an awful challenge. And then Tarek Lamptey's always had a niggle all the way back to when Potter was in charge of us, and when there was talks of him being like, better than Trent Alexander-Arnold almost. And those injuries really hampered his development. Then you've got, I would say there is a lot of overloading in Hertz's style of play. It does work when it's in that moment. When it works beautifully, it's fantastic to watch. But it's how much can a player take physically, and I think we've gone through our medical team. I think we've sacked them twice, complete overhaul twice in as many seasons. So we've now got someone who talks about muscle recovery as a specialty, and that's going to take a season for us to look into for it to work properly, because we've got a whole new training regime, schedules, and all that. The whole sports science is just bonkers now, because if we talk about football now from even 5 or 10 years ago, this was never really a big subject. It was probably
quite.
It was just a little thing that you would think about in your Football Manager game. That's about it. But now it's really much at the forefront of the game. So
fair enough. Look, talk to me, Tom, about Graham Potter. I'll just tell you my theory first. You can tell me what you think. I think Brighton Hove Albion make managers look better than they are because you're such a well-run club. I think it's much easier for a manager to get success at Brighton than it is for a manager to get success at a club like West Ham, for example, or like Manchester United. Or there's a few examples for clubs who, I feel like my theory is if you took all of the managers out of all the clubs, right, and then just ranked the clubs, the Premier League clubs, based on spending ability and quality of, like, almost like give them a rating on how they're run, like quality of backroom staff, basically. I think Brighton and Brentford are sort of in the top two of those. I think obviously Man City are up there because not only have they got huge, vast resources, alleged financial charges aside, not only have they got the vast resources historically or in recent history, they've spent the money really well, they've invested really well on sort of unknown players who turned out to be gems. And then you've got, clubs like sort of Chelsea in recent, since Bowley's come in, Manchester United, West Ham, who are run fairly like pretty badly. So I kind of think it's sort of if the same manager, and we're seeing it with Potter really, if the same manager goes into Brighton, and that's why I think if Thomas Frank leaves Brentford, I don't think he's that much of a special manager anywhere else. I think he has troubles because these managers, if you come up at a club like Brighton or Brentford, where everything's run really well, the owners are great, the recruitment is superb, and then you go into a club like West Ham, when it's sort of David Sullivan on the phone to like some agents, like almost a bit old school 1990s transfer dealings. Not that we haven't got a recruitment department and that we don't make data-driven decisions, but ultimately it's just David Sullivan sort of doing the deals. I think, and you've got to manage upwards lots more, and it's much more difficult. All of the invisible stuff that football fans don't really see. Or they see it at a surface level, but the actual mechanics of how a club's run and behind the scenes. And I think that's what we're seeing with Graham Potter. I think he does a very good job at Brighton. Don't get me wrong, he does a very good job there. But you would have large periods of like winless periods when you're drawing at home, or large periods of not scoring goals. It's not like he won the league or got in the Champions League, is it? It's like he's done a good job. And then he goes to Chelsea, and I think he gets a pass there because I think any manager in world football struggles going into Chelsea at that time. And I kind of feel like now he's at West Ham, he's kind of a bit more of a proper test of actually where he's at. And next season might be the one to tell. And I just feel next season for me, it just feels like at best we come 10th. I'm not seeing anything immediately that's amazing, but he's playing with other people's players and whatever. But I kind of think that he's like a really run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road average manager. And I just wonder what you think about that and what you saw from Potter during his time with you and what you've seen since and what your views on him are, because it'd be nice to get a fresh perspective from a non-West Ham fan, basically.
It is an interesting save for you to make there. I think we always talk about how managers are always invested in the project and, they believe in the projects and all that stuff. And I think Potter was almost like a project coach from the club's perspective, because we were going through a transition ourselves. Our recruitment still then wasn't that good.
It was post Houghton he came in, wasn't it? He came in after Chris Houghton?
Yeah. Houghton got sacked, and then Potter was signed like 2 days later. And that was really when the recruitment started to big up, and we were getting McAllister and then sending him on loan. Percy Tow's coming in, didn't work out. Caicedo, and then we send him to Beerschot over in Belgium, and they got relegated that season, which is bonkers to think. But Potter was the guy that was like, we believe in your style and your management skills. We think it works well long term. You've got, 2-3 seasons of a free hit, which is mental to think about when you think about the Premier League and how demanding it is. Free hit is a bit of it would be a dream for any manager. And Potter was invested, and it works well. We had the whole DNA structure. Potter on the sidelines, Dan Ashworth doing all the technical stuff, Paul Barber doing the business side of things, Bloom running everything from the top. We had Peter Winstanley in the scouting system. So everything had.
And the fans on side, you're a notorious, like a much more patient fan base, and obviously that come from where you'd been at the beginning. But compared to West Ham, there's lots more room for patience and understanding. Do you know what I mean?
There was, and look, I think a lot of the core fans still to this day really appreciate how far this club has come. I think a lot of the core memories the Albion have is, the Millennium Stadium back in the old Divi 2. It's, the last day of the season, surviving in the Championship relegation battles, all those kind of things. Bobby Zamora still lives strongly in our memory. So there is this absolutely huge trajectory, which again you only ever see on a FIFA career mode or on your Football Manager saves. And we were living in this in the moment. It was fantastic to see. Now, and Potter was the perfect man for it. We believed in him. We were frustrated, absolutely, and I'll answer with this bit as well. Like you said, we had an 11-match winless run, and then we had a 6-match losing streak as well in the last full season Potter had. But
And am I right in thinking there were periods where you couldn't score any goals either?
Oh no, we couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo, and then we beat Arsenal and Spurs at Spurs back-to-back weekends. That was fantastic. Singing North London is ours was like that was a great away day. But we had this belief at the end of the season saying, like, you know, things are starting to click. There is a rhythm here that we're liking. The players coming in are working. They're believing in Potter. They see what's happening. We can see it working. It just needs to click in the final third. Then we fast forward to the following season, and that game against Leicester where we won 5-2 was like early days, yes, but there was a real belief, like, you know, we can actually finally break that top 10. We can maybe get ourselves in that European conversation once again. We never really had that confidence. We had the ambition, but we never really had the confidence as a fan base to have it. And then you fast forward a week, Potter's gone because he had the first major interest in a big job. Yes, it was Chelsea. Yes, it was a project. It ticks all the right boxes for Potter. There was Todd Bowley saying, we want to build in this club. We want to put the investment in, but equally we want the long-term strategy in place. Potter was perfect for it. I think the way it all happened was why a lot of Brighton fans were upset and still hold a grudge over Potter for it, because it was the first major job, and Chelsea looked a little bit of like a question mark, really.
Well, massive, yeah. All their recruitment strategy that summer was wild, wasn't it?
It was wild, and all of a sudden he's gone, and he had the added burden as well. They were at the time the reigning, you know, champions of Europe. So again, there was added burdens for him to do.
Following Thomas Tuchel, it was just wild.
It was always a hard grasp to do, and it just didn't work out for him for one reason or the other. But then De Zerbi comes along, and we want to win this run. Funny enough, but again, we saw what was happening. De Zerbi, the way he was playing was really exciting, and we saw that in that season. Chelsea come along, and I have to say this: him and Mark Cucurella, I have never heard a fan base, and I've travelled home and away to many grounds, many teams with many stories. I have never seen a fan base so utterly fixated on two people for 90 minutes of football.
Who's this? Cucurella and Caicedo or Potter?
No, Cucurella and Potter. Caicedo was kind of like a forgotten figure in it all, but we know Cucurella is a massive wind-up merchant. It's why we loved him. Now we hate him because he's a wind-up merchant against us. But Potter was like, nah, we don't forgive you for how it happened as a fans. And for 90 minutes, it was, you know, Potter, what's the score? And every time he got out from his chair to the sidelines, he was getting booed, he was getting heckled. Everywhere you look,
just because he left, like, remind West Ham fans of what exactly how that went down then.
So, well, just after the Leicester City win,
so this is the beginning of the season, right?
Yes, it was beginning of the season. Then Tuchel got sacked, and immediately Chelsea want in on Potter. And it wasn't just Potter he wanted Billy Reid, he wanted his other coach as well. And also as well, they wanted Bruno. Bruno was a legend to us, and Bruno Salsor. He was our legend. We loved him. We took him in as our own. He was El Capitan. There were murals in the city, murals plural. That's how much he was loved and adored. And there was so much secrecy and silence about how is it going to go about. Like, Chelsea paid £25 million for all of them, and Peter Winstanley as well, our head of recruitment. So there was almost like this. it got to a point where it's kind of like, why are you so obsessed with us?
Mm.
Caicedo, Cucurella, Potter, Winston, you weren't just going for our players, you're going for the structure as well.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
so it was just, you're trying to be us with a new lick of paint, or try to
Mm.
be. So then there just became this little bit of a rivalry between us. We wanted to keep Levi Colwell last season. Didn't happen. So
No.
again, there was constantly this, there's always been like this little drive of Chelsea in us.
So,
Where
hatred aside, though, Tom, what do you think of Potter as a manager? Like, just hatred aside, if you
yeah,
can,
I'll
what
try.
do you think of him as a coach?
I think him as a coach, you you got to be patient with him. The way he plays and the way he wants his players to understand the game is unique. He doesn't really believe in formations, and while some may not like that, when it works, it is beautiful to watch. His football and
Mm.
style of play is really, really nice to see. And there are, some similarities to how I see a lot of West Ham's philosophy. I remember many moons ago when Sam Allardyce was in charge. I remember the chance of where West Ham United would play on the floor to
Mm.
ridicule him. That's a similar style of play that I see with Potter. He's very patient on the ball. There's the
Yeah.
passing and the moving, and there's fluidity in attack. And when it works, it's wonderful to see. If it doesn't, you're kind of seeing what's happening right now.
So, do you think then, because we've been so pants, but I think he does. He's got a bit. I think we won 3-13 or 3-14. He gets a bit of a pass, to be fair, because he come in. Lopetegui totally butchered the team. And you come in the middle of a season, it's difficult to get your ideas across. You're doing it with someone else's players. Do you think that, given a summer at West Ham, and I think we're going to struggle to recruit too much this year, like because of the financial fair play factors, unless we somehow manage to convince someone to take Kudus and Paqueta off our hands for £100 million plus for the two of them. Do you feel that with because this is the sort of yards David Moyes set the benchmark at West Ham about what we can be as a club. So that's kind of what certainly me I want to be aiming for again. Some of my greatest days of my life watching West Ham in Europe. I want that again. Do you think that given another summer and a bit more patience, Graham Potter can be that for West Ham, or do you think he's just the limit really is like mid-table, sort of knocking flirting with Europe, but not really getting there and then going deep?
As much as I have got a degree of Schadenfreude with him in terms of how his career's going, West Ham fans, if you can have that degree of patience and let him do his work, the moment it clicks, it's really exciting. We only got it for a couple of weeks and it was exhilarating to watch. When it clicks for West Ham are going to be knocked down at the bottom of this conversation in the relegation battles almost. It's going to be, again, you're going to find yourself, you'll climb your way to mid-table next season, and then you're going to find yourself again in Europe. He believes in long-term strategy. No doubt he's not looking at players to sign, he's looking at youngsters to bring in. So again, the Academy of Football, he really champions youth recruitment and youth development. We saw that at the Albion. It works and sometimes it didn't, but that's just, again, that's part and parcel of the game. He definitely has a belief in the philosophy. He'll see it in the team and he'll know how to make them work.
Yeah.
It's a very complex way he goes about it, but it has worked in the past. It worked with Östersund. It worked with Swansea. It worked with us to a bit.
But that's sort of where I sort of find it a bit difficult, because it's like you talk about Östersunds and Swansea, and you go, well, you can't really compare. You can't really
No.
compare those two jobs to the job of manager of West Ham United. And Brighton, like I say, I think he did a good job. I don't think it was like spectacularly amazing. And then what you've seen since is that you're a well-run club, and any manager with half a brain in their head can do well at Brighton. De Zerbi, obviously, that moved on fairly quickly, but was doing good things, or exciting things at least. And yeah, and so I just think Chelsea can't really compare. I think this is the first real test of his mettle.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think is interesting. I think at the end of next season that's when you'll be able to tell what level of manager Graham Potter is, because he'll have been at a variety of different clubs. And I think if we come 12th again next year and bow out the cups with no real, no real oomph or no real fight like we had this season, then I think he never gets a job as big as West Ham again. He never gets a job as big as Chelsea, certainly. And then I think you're sort of seeing him in charge of maybe like a Crystal Palace or a Bournemouth, maybe. And all due respect to those clubs, who are doing far better than West Ham this season. But do you know what I mean? Where there's just size wise, and because if not, you've got to get in Europe with West Ham now. That's where we're supposed to be at with the size of the stadium, the spending power, and Dave Moyes has proved what we can do. So it's interesting. But look, Tom, just before I let you go, we better talk about the actual game on Saturday. What are you expecting, style-wise, team news, for anything like that from Brighton? What should West Ham fans be wary of?
So it's going to be an interesting one because I'm not sure if Kaoru Mitoma is going to be fit enough yet. And Mitoma is basically our number one, the guy who makes the difference for us. It didn't really work out last weekend with Dingra, but the last time we were at home anyway. Mitoma made an impact in the game against Brentford, and so much so. But again, we didn't really get that much of a result. João Pedro's out for 3 games because of his stupidity, and then we've got Veltman's still out injured, and he's someone we really miss at the back. So again, it's going to be a hard fought match. I think it's not going to be one that I'd be confident with. And like you say, you want that point to just confirm your safety, and then that way Potter can reset the clock and be like, right, this is day one for me now. I'm honestly very, very much sitting on the fence on this, but also skeptical on how well we're going to do. I reckon it's going to be a decent match, but it's going to be 2-2.
I think it's got 1-1 written all over it, Tom. By all accounts, the Southampton game last week, 1-1 at home, was an absolute stinker, albeit they got their equaliser late on. But West Ham, Nicholas Fulkrug fuming afterwards. Lots of criticism for us not going for the jugular. It's just got drab draw written all over it again, or 1-0 defeat for West Ham. It would be nice just to, we're sort of grabbing onto the small mercies in this season now. We've still got Tottenham to play, so that would be good if we can beat them and finish above them in the table. Sort of learning how to beat Brighton on the regular would be quite nice after a decade and a half of failing to beat you. But look, Tom, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the We Are West Ham podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the slightly longer episode to make up for the rushed one we had to do earlier this week, James and I. But interesting to hear Tom's thoughts on Graham Potter, and so Tom's message there: stick with him, show a bit of patience, and Europe beckons once again. Fingers crossed, and I hope you're proved right. Tom, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to you guys for listening. Don't forget to follow us on all socials. Just search We Are West Ham Podcast on your favourite platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can join up to the Patreon if you want, patreon.com/We Are West Ham Podcast. And thanks for listening. Me and James will be back as usual next week. Up the Hammers. West Ham is still massive, and we'll speak to you then.